study food as medicine. And to me, it's really so fun to discover new properties of foods. And for me, like we started out talking about the fact that people feel shackled by the burden of excess weight or metabolism or diets that they have to go on and rotate on and rotate off of. I actually think that science tells us it's time to rediscover the joy of eating.
Totally.
And just by choosing the right food and eating in the right ways, we can actually reclaim our life back and also combine it with enjoyment because, we're humans. Eating and enjoying our food is really part of who we are.
Yes.
And I think we've gotten away from that and just turned into sort of, gotten into these sort of instruction sheets and automatons, and we've taken that away from ourselves. So it's time to actually take it back.
Hey, this is Chad Namiro.
And I'm Kelley Namiro. Welcome to the Balancing Chaos podcast,
a lifestyle podcast where we will interview guests about wellness, business, and just about everything in between.
Our goal is to help you develop a lifestyle that promotes health, wholeness, and success. Through our conversations, we hope to inspire you to live a beautiful, full, and joyful life as you navigate balancing the chaos.
We hope you enjoy.
Today on the show, we are sitting down with Dr. William Li. Dr. William Li is an internationally renowned physician, scientist, and author of the New York Times bestseller, Eat to Beat Disease, the new science of how your body can heal itself. His groundbreaking research has led to the development of more than 30 new medical treatments that impact care for more than 70 diseases, including diabetes, blindness, heart disease, and obesity. And in his TED Talk, Can We Eat to Starve Cancer?, he has garnered more than 11 million views. The president and medical doctor for the Angiogenesis Foundation and is leading global initiatives on food and medicine. In his newest book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, Burn Fat, Heal Your Metabolism, and Live Longer, he talks all about metabolic health, which is what I know our listeners want to hear most about. So today we're going to talk about harmful fat, improving your metabolism, and living longer. I think one of the things that people have so many questions about is this idea of inflammation and how inflammation is stored in fat and all of this different stuff, how that impacts our metabolism. So let's start there, Dr. Li. What are the biggest misconceptions you hear about the metabolism?
Right. Well, my new book is called Eat to Beat Your Diet, and it's a trick title because it's not a diet book. It's an anti-diet book, and that's really how I get into metabolism.
Yeah.
And the reason I made that title is because so many of us struggle with this idea that we got to be on a diet in order to have a better metabolism, or that we're cursed with the metabolism because we've got too much body fat. And, this is a society obsessed with weight loss and fads. Look, everyone's confused. And I'm a doctor. I trained as an MD. I can tell you that even I was confused about metabolism. And so I wrote a book really to say, what is the new science of the metabolism? What does it really teach us? What human metabolism is like? What's the connection to fat? I mean, is fat really as bad as we think it is? And also food. Is eating food categorically going to cause us to gain weight and screw up our metabolism? What's the truth behind all this? And then how do you put it all together? So let's start with a couple of myths about metabolism.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So Kelley and Chad, tell me if you heard this before. People are either born with a slow metabolism or a fast metabolism, which is why they have to struggle with their weight and they struggle with food.
Of course.
Right? I feel like so many people say it's genetic, right?
That's what everyone told me my whole life. I've actually always been pretty skinny, and I've actually struggled to put on weight when I wanted to, when I was in high school, et cetera. And everyone always said to me, that's just because you have a fast metabolism. So yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, guess what? That's actually not true. It turns out the latest research shows that we are all born with the exact same metabolism. Let me explain. So our metabolism is like the operating system of your laptop. So if you guys were to go to the computer store and I were to go to the computer store, we bought the exact same model of a laptop, plugged it in, you where you are, me where I am, booted it up, and the operating system would turn it on. It would operate exactly the same way out of the box. And it turns out that's how human metabolism is wired. Makes a lot of sense, right? your heart is designed to beat, our hearts are designed to beat in a certain way. Our brains are designed to work in a certain way. Why would we suddenly be, given a roll of the dice and have a fast or slow metabolism? So let me tell you how we figured this out. And then it's going to lead to some other jaw droppers about myths of metabolism that I'll tell you my jaw dropped when I learned what the truth is. Okay, so there was a study that was done, and it was published less than 2 years ago. So this is smoking hot research.
Yeah.
In fact, most doctors haven't even heard about this yet. I'm a researcher, so I actually see this stuff all the time, in which is a landmark study involving 6,000 people over 20 countries, massive research study involving 90 scientists coming together. All right. And what they did is they studied 6,000 people from 20 countries in exactly the same way. That's why it's so groundbreaking, because they gave everybody a little drink of water. Water, as you know, is H2O. Mm-hmm. H stands for hydrogen, O stands for oxygen. What the researchers did, they tweaked the hydrogen, tweaked the oxygen. And so when they gave it to people to drink, the metabolism processed the atoms, the hydrogen and oxygen, so you could measure what the metabolism in the breath, in the blood, or even in the urine. All right. So this is the largest, most ambitious study ever done, because the people they studied, among the 6,000 people, they studied people that were 2 days old, newborns, and also studied people at the end of life, 90 plus years old, and everyone in between. All right. And here's what they found. They found when they first looked at metabolism, it was all over the map, just like you'd expect. Aha, just what I thought it would be, right? Wrong. What they did, because we now live in this world of supercomputing, right? So we can crunch a lot of data using, basically stuff you can get into a home office. What they did is it developed an algorithm, okay, that would actually look into this data of 6,000 people and remove the effect of excess body fat. In other words, it corrected for every individual in the study what excess body fat is. So they removed it. And when they removed the effect of excess body fat, here's what they found. Every single person born with the exact same metabolism, out of the box, we're all the same, okay? And they found that humans go through 4 phases of metabolism over the course of our life, and only 4. So here's phase 1, 0 to 1 year old, metabolism goes up like a rocket, okay? So that when you're 1, your metabolism is 50% higher than what it's gonna be when you're an adult. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is from age 1 to 20. So it's right through teenage years. Metabolism goes from its height goes down to adult levels. Now, why is that surprising? Because anybody who's ever seen a teenager, and we were all teenagers before.
Hoover food.
You're hoovering food, eating 2 or 3 dinners, bouncing off the walls, growing tall, right? And you're like, man, that metabolism must be going through the roof. Okay. Yeah. Is that right? Wrong. It turns out metabolism is coming down to adult levels. All right. And what it shows you is that you just can't assume, based on what people are telling you, that what you're told is actually true, what you think might be true. You need the data. Now, here's the next part. Before I talk about phase 3, how many of you heard? I mean, both of you guys, I'm sure you have, and we've all heard that metabolism. What happens during middle age? The metabolism, especially
slows
down,
especially for women.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Right. So everyone assumes that when you reach your 40s or 50s, you're going to start changing your shape. You're going to start gaining extra body fat, and your metabolism is going to change. Right. So enter phase 3. This is the mic drop finding for this study. When they looked at how humans metabolize in phase 3 from age 20 to 60, human metabolism is hardwired to be rock stable. It does not change. Out of the box, our operating system is completely supposed to be stable. Now, obviously, it does change in people because we see people struggling with it all the time. Yeah. I'm going to come back to why that happens. Okay.
That was going to be my next question.
Now, phase 4 is that at the very end, from 60 to 90, our metabolisms do decrease a little bit by about 17%. So by the time you're 90, it'll be 17% lower than when it was at 60, which is what it is at 20. Now, what I just told you about stage 3 is that metabolism in middle age, our entire adult lives, 20 to 60, is rock stable, right? So if you were to follow your hardwired human metabolism, 60 can be the new 20, if you allow the metabolism to do its thing. So what happens? Why do we actually struggle in middle age with our metabolism? It's called life. Life happens to us. All right. Your metabolism is the same. But what happens when we get to our 40s and 50s, okay, and above, that's the time where we've got stress. We got job stress. We got real estate stress. We got family stress. We got economic stress. We've got political stress, world stress, climate change stress. And what happens is that our behaviors start to be a little bit less on the ball than we wish. You get a little distracted. Now you're not exercising the same way. You get a little more distracted, and now you're stressed out and you're not sleeping as well. You're not sleeping as well. It's easier to make poor decisions the next day. Right. All right. And so all these things start to pile up. You got kids, and now you're actually chasing your kids all day long, or you're worried about their high school applications or college applications. And now you're not able to be on the ball like you were when you were 20s or your teens. So what happens is that with all those decisions, one more thing that happens when life happens, we tend to fall more prey to the marketing tactics of food manufacturers.
Right.
Right.
Using food as like comfort, where you're like having all these processed things. Did those types of foods like that are marketed towards you versus the whole real foods impact the rate of metabolism as well?
Here's what happens. They cause us to gain body fat, excess body fat. Now what happens, first of all, artificial preservatives, colorings, and flavorings, which are present in most of the stuff that you would get, let's say at an airport newsstand, most of that stuff, or in the middle aisle of a grocery store, although not exclusively. All those things contain substances that cause our gut microbiome, our gut health, to actually go off rail. When our gut health goes off rail, our lipids, our cholesterol starts to go off handle, and our metabolism starts to go off handle, and we start to grow body fat. Now, when we grow body fat, remember what I told you with this research study, they removed the effect of excess body fat to find out what true human metabolism is. Now, when they started to throw body fat back into the equation, you know what it did to that rock stable metabolism? It shut it down. It's not that a slow metabolism causes you to gain fat and gain weight. It's the other way around. Yeah. Excess body fat slows your metabolism. So when life happens in our middle ages, we do things that allow extra body fat to grow down, and that slows down our metabolism. That's actually what happens. And so that sounds like, oh man, like that's a real bummer. I can tell you, better than being genetically cursed, number one, and number two, because we have the agency to change our decisions in our lives, especially food, we got the power. And that power is to be able to choose foods that can actually burn body fat. And this is actually where I go with my book. I take you on a tour of the grocery store, imagining, like, Kelley, you are sitting in my grocery cart, like you did when you were a kid in your mom's grocery cart, and I push you around and I whisper in your ear all the things you should be plucking off the displays to put into the cart that can help fight body fat and help release, kind of reveal your inner metabolism. And that's basically, Chad, so when you talk about like, oh man, like I always had difficulty gaining weight, here's the thing that you could do, which is that you can choose certain foods that actually can redirect your muscle growth. So you want to gain more muscle weight.
Yes,
you want to gain extra fat. You want to gain more muscle weight. Right. Okay. And so there are ways of actually, believe it or not, growing using your stem cells to actually try to populate your muscle, to regenerate your muscles. You want to gain more muscle weight, not fat weight. All right. So that's a very important thing. You want more muscle, less fat at any stage in your life.
Right. And that more muscle, less fat is going to be what I've, as a health coach, and I'm nowhere near your level, but what I can understand is that like basically the muscle is going to burn through more calories than the fat will.
Yes and no. I mean, the key thing about muscle is that the muscle mass supports most of the other health defenses in our body. It's necessary to have more muscle to have better circulation, because blood vessels run through your muscle. You need to have basically earth to put a highway on, or to put a road on, and our circulation are really the highways and byways of our body. So you need to be able to have good soil in order to be able to lay pavement on.
Got it.
And that's one of the reasons why that is. The second thing is that muscle mass gives us agility, gives us strength, gives us endurance, and muscle itself is a hormone producing factory.
Right.
And so that's why it's also important. The flip side is that excess body fat is a fuel tank. So a little bit of fat is always good for you.
I deal with a lot of clients who come to me and like their main goal is weight loss. Like that's what they want. And they have been on all of these yo-yo diets and they're like, oh, well, because I've done this dieting thing for so many years, I've slowed my metabolism down. So can you talk about like, can you come back from that? Or is that even a true thing? And also, why is a little bit of body fat a good thing?
Let's first unpack our reaction to fat, right? So listen, I don't care what size you are. All of us have experienced this at some point in our lives, right? You take a shower, you step out of the shower, out of the corner of your eye, you look in the mirror and you see something, a little lump or a bump that, you know, like you're not happy with.
Right.
All right. Usually it's not a big deal, but some people really pay a lot of attention to it. And immediately you start cursing. Damn, I got to get in better shape. Or I got to eat better. And then what do? The next thing you do when you see that, you step on a scale. And if that number isn't the exact number you were hoping for, it's a disappointment. And so now you've associated what you see in the mirror with a number on the scale, and then you start cursing yourself. And so right from the get-go, like our adult association of body fat is form, weight. And then, by the way, even if you go to the grocery store, right, and you're wheeling, I don't care if you're a vegan or not, but if you wheel by the butcher counter, okay, the butcher section, and you see a nice steak with a big rind of fat, like you stare at that, you'll go, ugh, I don't want that, right? So we have this visceral, have a visceral reaction to fat, right? Now, here's the thing. Let me take you back in time to the fact that we were babies. When we were babies, we made our moms and dads and relatives smile because we were pudgy.
Yeah.
Okay, baby fat is beautiful and delicious, right? What do you got a little baby? You got a pot belly, you got chubby cheeks, you got arms and legs that look like a circus balloon, you know, the ones that the clowns make a dog out of, a poodle out of balloons. All right. So you got to think about it. Like body fat can't be 100% bad if a baby has it. So what I did, I tracked body fat back to its origins to try to figure out why the heck do we even have fat at all? All right. Now, here's the thing. It's amazing. When your mom's egg met your dad's sperm and you became a ball of cells, it's going to be the future you. The first cells that get laid down, the first tissue that was made was your circulation, because every organ's going to need some blood flow, so it's got to have that. Second tissue gets laid down are nerves. Nerves are like the electrical wiring in your body, and every organ needs instructions, signals later on. Okay, makes sense. Third tissue gets laid down is body fat.
Oh, wow.
Now, body fat starts like a roll of bubble wrap. You know, the plastic wrap that's got little bubbles for packing. Okay. Now, when you're born and when you're little, the fat forms like a sheet of bubble wrap, and they get wrapped around blood vessels.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Why is that happening? Because every little bubble in the bubble wrap is a fat cell, and that little fat cell is a storage tank for fuel that we ultimately get from the food that we eat. And where does that food and that fuel go? Into our bloodstream. So if you want to actually store up your fuel tank, you want to actually put it right next to where you're going to be able to get the fuel,
right? Which
is out of your bloodstream. So the bubble wrap puts the fuel tanks right next to the bloodstream, and then we're born. We get all the fat we need, all right? And then what happens is that when we eat food, insulin rises in our body, made by our pancreas. Insulin's a hormone, draws in the energy from food, like blood sugar, so it gives us energy. Any excess that we don't need right away gets stored in the fuel tank, all right? That's how our metabolism works. Our metabolism is like driving a car. You don't think about it, the fact that there's gasoline going to the engine and powering the engine if you drive a gas car. But the thing is that you do keep your eye on the fuel gauge. When the fuel gauge goes towards empty, what do? We pull over to the filling station, take out the pump nozzle, put it into the tank, fill it right up, take the nozzle out and go on our way, right? So when we eat food, it's exactly what we're doing. We are eating food. We are putting fuel into our body. Insulin is using the fuel for whatever we need at the moment. Anything extra goes into the fuel tank. Our fat cells, the ones that started as bubble wrap, actually are our fuel tanks. Now, here's how it works. Now, if you are eating food with extra fuel, you'll put it in a tank. If you keep on eating and you overeat, your body's gonna stuff another fuel tank, another fat cell. Every fat cell, by the way, can grow 100 times its size. It stretches. Okay. Oh, still eating? All right, let's fill up another one. Yeah. Oh, still more food? Let's fill up another one, over and over. By the way, when you run out of fat cells, this is a myth that you basically are born with all the fat cells you ever have. We used to think that. It's not true. When you run out of fat cells because you've eaten so much, you've stuffed all your fat cells, our bodies can tap into stem cells to say, oh, still more food? We've out of fat. Let's go make another round of fat.
Wow.
So it just clones another fat cell. Let's fill that. Oh, we need another one? Sure. And so you can see how fat builds simply by overeating. Now, just like the fuel in your car, imagine if you, when you fill up your tank, you know how when the tank is full, it go click and that's it. No more gas comes out, right? If you didn't have that click and fuel kept on rushing out of, what would actually happen? I can tell you that what would happen is that the gas would come out of your car, run down the side of your car, around the tires, pool around your feet. And what would you be doing? We'd all be standing in the middle of a toxic, flammable, dangerous mess. Now, we don't have a clicker in our body. We can keep eating. We can keep eating. And when we actually overload our fat cells, our fuel tanks, I don't want to think about calories. I just want to think fuel tanks for a second, okay? Overload our fuel tanks. What happens is that the growing fat becomes necrotic or dead in the center because it doesn't have enough blood supply, becomes really inflamed. That inflammation leaks out of the fat, spreads throughout your body, okay? It's very dangerous. It's just like, it's a disease, right? Now, one more thing, just like the gas tank, if you overstuff your fat capacity, fat will leak out of the tank and it goes right to the liver and it'll poison the liver. It's called lipotoxicity. And that is the cause of a silent epidemic called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. All right. That is overflowed tanks. And instead of standing in a puddle of gasoline, it's all going to our liver and poisoning our liver. Okay. So this is, by the way, is the excess of food, but we actually want to eat normally.
Right.
And this is where the quality of the fuel matters. So you go to the filling station, you guys, and I'm like, I loan you my car and I say, hey, just make sure that you keep the tank filled. You know, like you go, oh man, I want to make sure his car is well taken care of. So you're going to put high quality tank gas in my car. All right. Just like you would do for your own car. Now, if you were to put low quality fuel into my car, I won't notice. It'll be fine. But if I had that bad habit of putting low quality fuel in my car every single day for years, my car is not going to run very long. And that's the same thing about the quality of the fuel or the quality of the food that we put into your system. Now you can see quality of food, quantity of food, quality of the food that we eat, the quantity of the fuel of the food that we eat can all make a difference in terms of how our body works and how we get energy for our metabolism.
So if somebody was doing that, because like I said, I think for me, I know that like back in the day, when I actually had an eating disorder. So like I was under eating a lot, and I have a lot of clients who will do like yo-yo diets where they're not eating enough. Is it possible to slow your metabolism that way? Because I know you're saying like if you're eating too much and you have this fat, that's going to slow it. But if you're not eating enough, can that slow your metabolism too?
Well, it depends on where you are in the cycle, right? Cycling, weight cycling is actually not good for you because you're going from inflamed to maybe not so inflamed, then inflamed again. And what happens is you knock your system off balance. Like what we want, what good health is an equilibrium. We want to be in as much of a state of balance as we can. A little bit of wiggle is okay, but we don't want to be going up and down huge waves, riding the waves, okay? Now, here's the thing. A lot of people don't realize that our body is this remarkable engine that tries to seek balance whenever it can. All right. So no matter where you are in your health journey and what kind of weight issues you may or may not be dealing with, or your diet, what kind of fad diets or extreme diets you might have been on, if you actually go back down to what your body wants to do, and allow your own inner machinery, your operating system, to do what it wants to do. It's kind of like, look, if your laptop is starting to fritz, what you want to do is you want to run an antivirus program on it. You might need to reload your operating system, but what you don't want to be doing is just adding more things, putting more apps onto your system. All right. That actually kind of keeps the thing off balance. So here's what I always tell people is a reasonable way to do a true reset, because people talk about resets all the time. When I think about reset, I don't think about like purges or cleansing.
Yeah.
I think about, look, here's what we want to do. We want to actually let our body equilibrate and get back to its normal. How do we do this? Well, the simplest way is to start with when you eat and how you eat. All right, we're going to talk about what you eat in a second. But I tell people to do a food journal, to write down whenever it is they sit down to eat food or put food in their mouth, how much they eat, what it is, and how much they actually eat, and record the time. And here's what it is. When your insulin is rising, which means that when you're eating, all right, your body is focused on drawing fuel into your cells and not on burning fuel. When you're not eating, insulin goes down. And when your insulin is down, suddenly your metabolism switches gears and says, all right, let's go for fuel burning. Let's burn off all that stuff that's stored in the fat. Okay. Right. Now, and people talk about intermittent fasting in this way, but I'll tell you, we all do intermittent fasting. It's not some crazy fad. When we're sleeping, we're not eating. When we're not eating, we're fasting. Okay. But here's the underlying reason that I sort of want to do a reframe people's thinking. When we're actually sleeping and we're not eating, our insulin levels go down. No need for insulin because you're not eating food. When our insulin levels go down, metabolism switches gears to burn fat. So I tell you, if you can actually, the medical research shows if you try to get 8 hours of sleep, it's a lot of good things that 8 hours of sleep does. It reboots your immune system, helps to drain your brain of toxins. But perhaps most importantly for the clients that you were talking about, Kelley, in those 8 hours, their body is switching to fat burning mode.
Right.
Now, it might take more than one night if they've been accumulating all this stuff over days, weeks, or years.
Right.
Okay, decades. But the thing is that that's actually what happens. The way to maximize, optimize, increase your fat burning period, it's very natural. You do it by not eating after supper. So a lot of people stack after dinner all night long.
Oh, okay? Yeah.
Sit down and watch some TV, put a bowl of whatever, eat it. Oh, how about a midnight snack before I go to bed? Let me tell you, when you actually snack after dinner, your insulin goes up and it makes it harder for you to burn. So if you want extra time, all right, this is sort of like, you want to actually, snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. You want to gain a little bit more fat burning time, fuel burning time. Okay, how do you do this? I always say, okay, let's say I eat dinner at 7 o'clock and I put my dishes away at 8 o'clock. All right, I'm not talking about a European dinner where you're eating like for 3 hours. All right, but like
smoking,
and smoking exactly. So you eat dinner at 7, put your dishes away at 8. Now you're done eating. Because you put your dishes away, no more eating. Let's say you go to bed at 11 and you sleep for 8 hours and get up at 7. I'm giving you like an ideal time as examples. If you stop eating at 8 o'clock because your dishes are put away, nothing else, you go to bed at 11, that's 3 hours of low insulin fuel burning time. All right. Add that on to the 8 hours you're going to sleep. 3 plus 8 is 11. And then here's what I do. When I get up in the morning, I don't do what my mom trained me to do when I was a kid, which is hurry up, get up, eat some breakfast, get on that school bus to get to school in time, right? I get up, I take my time getting ready, take a shower, get dressed. I'll go for a walk. I'll check my emails. I'll read a book or something, catch up with the news. About an hour after I wake up is before I put anything in my mouth. I might have some coffee, I might have some tea, whatever, but liquid doesn't count. And if it doesn't have any calories to it. Okay, now let's do the math. Dishes away, 3 hours of time to fat burning. Sleep, 8 hours. 3 plus 8, 11 hours.
One more.
Wait for an hour, again, then 1 extra hour, 12 hours. I've just spent half my day with my metabolism in fuel burning mode. So this is what I always tell people, when you get started, okay, on trying to let your metabolism do its thing. Try to regain equilibrium. The first thing to do, don't eat after dinner. Wait for a little time after you get up in the morning before you eat, and count the number of hours that you're actually going to be in fuel and fat burning mode.
Right.
When you actually ask people to really be honest with how much time they're actually spending eating, it's shocking.
It is.
People are snacking all day long.
Most people are. And I think that really simplifies it for people too, the way you're putting it. Cause it's 12 hours. You're still getting all 3 meals of the day. It's not calorie restrictive at all. You're having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it really does simplify it. It's just like, don't sit there and eat popcorn until 11 o'clock at night.
It's contrary to what like I've been taught to when you're in high school and you're lifting weights, they teach you to eat all the time. And then you probably read it or seen it or heard of it, but I recently read a research paper that was saying there's pretty good evidence to show there's more longevity for people who space their meals out by at least 4.5 hours.
So let me give you the reason behind that, the why. Okay, so remember, we're talking about insulin. Whenever you put food in your mouth, your pancreas goes, all right, I'm going to squirt some more insulin out because we got to get some of that fuel in. All right? It's super simple. It's like that dude at the gas station that used to come out with the cap to help you put the gas in your car. All right, that's insulin. All right. So if you're eating all day long, that insulin dude's coming out all the time.
Right.
All right. And when your insulin levels are up, here's something that a lot of people don't know, but because I'm a medical researcher, I can share this insight with you. To make insulin in your body, the cells, your pancreas uses a substance called insulin growth factor, IGF-1, insulin growth factor 1. It's like a fertilizer for insulin. Okay. It's like starter material for insulin. It's like a cake batter for insulin. All right. You need it to make insulin. The more insulin you have, the more IGF-1 your body has to have insulin. More insulin, more food, continuous eating, more IGF-1. And here's really kind of like the secret behind the curtain. Insulin-like growth factor, when it's up all the time, because you're eating all the time, or when you have a lot of body fat and now you're insulin insensitive, you've got metabolic syndrome, you're heading towards diabetes, your insulin just keeps on piling up because it's not working. IGF, insulin growth factor, going up all the time. Insulin-like growth factor is an underlying trigger for inflammation. It provokes cancer growth. It makes cancer cells go boom. It's like fertilizer for cancer cells. A little bit, no problem. When it's out all the time, it is like gasoline for tumors. All right. It makes them really want to race and grow. The other thing that actually happens is that it actually provokes blood vessels to grow into tumors.
Oh, wow.
Now, a cancer is harmless until it's got a blood supply. The moment a tumor, and this is my area of research, I'm a cancer researcher as well. The moment if you take a tumor, cancer cells, and you prevent blood vessels from ever getting to it, it can't grow up. It can only grow to the size of the tip of a ballpoint pen, like the one you're holding right in your hand, Chad. And that's it. Okay. It can't get any bigger. It doesn't have a blood supply. But in the lab, when we allow blood vessels to grow up and touch the tip of that pen and give it oxygen and give it nutrients, because tumors also need to feed, guess what? A microscopic cancer that has a blood supply will grow 16,000 times in 2 weeks in size.
Wow.
It is a trigger for cancer growth. IGF-1 up all the time, not a good thing. Put a little context behind the fact that you just said, Chad. When you actually space out your eating, insulin isn't quite so high. IGF levels are going down. You've got a much better chance of living a longer life without causing all these other problems.
I remember a time in my life when springtime would hit and immediately I would be searching for a new trainer or Googling all of the 7-day juice cleanse, 14-day detoxes so that I could get myself in shape for summer. And what I didn't realize at this time was that all of that was a complete waste of my time, of my energy, of my resources. And I look back on that just wishing for those hours and all of that energy and brain power back.
The decisions that I was making for my body were coming from a place of punishment rather than from a place of love. And it wasn't until I started meditating and I started doing the work, the real work on myself, that I recognized that I needed to nourish my body with both movement and food and mindset work if I ever wanted my body to love me back in a sustainable way. And that's why the WBK membership, that I release meditations where I deeply connect you with yourself, and blood sugar balancing recipes to nourish you on a cellular level, and low impact movement to support the delicate balance of your hormones, really gets you the results that you're looking for, where it starts to become a lifestyle. It starts to become who you are. I can tell you firsthand that both myself and my members, my private clients, all of us have seen the most incredible results from the WBK method. It's so different than your typical diet and a restrictive approach that we're taught from diet culture from a very early age. As a 33-year-old mom of two, this is the leanest I've ever been, the most energy that I've ever had, and the best that I have ever felt in my freaking body. And it can be that way for you too. So right now, with the code Balancing Chaos, all one word, BALANCINGCHAOS, you can get 10% off your annual membership for the WBK method and get new weekly content, plus a library of hundreds of workouts, recipes, meditations, with a 7-day reset and a 30-day challenge, all to get you started. So use the code Balancing Chaos, again, all one word, to start your 7-day free trial and see, when you love your body back, how your body starts to love you.
I know in your book, you talk a lot about longevity too. So this is kind of like, it really impacts not just how much body fat we're carrying around or like our energy levels, but it does impact like the rate of disease in our bodies.
Oh, my gosh, absolutely. I want to come back to this whole concept of the quality of your fuel matters. So once you've adjusted your eating time and, you get those 12 hours a day, whatever.
And like 3 meals a day? That's what you subscribe to?
Sure. 3 meals a day is fine. But if you want to skip, you want to be a little more intense, like this whole idea of 16-8 intermittent fasting.
That's what
you want to go 16. If you can do it and you can maintain it, go for it.
Do you think that raises cortisol in the body?
It can if it stresses you out, which may or may not be a good thing. Everyone's going to respond a little bit different. But by the way, here's something that I learned about 16 and 8. Obviously, if you're not eating for 16 hours, your metabolism is shifting into more fat burning mode for 16 hours instead of 12. 12 works, by the way, in human studies. 12 is perfectly fine. 16, you get a little more bang out of your buck, but you're also reaching a little bit harder as well for that gain. But so I'm a researcher. I'm like, who the heck said 16? Why not 17? Why not 15? Right. Who came up with that magic number 16? Well, here's the reality. This research came out of a study out of Stanford in mice.
Oh.
Okay. Where they studied 16 and 8 in mice. All right. They fed mice for 8 hours and then they fasted them for 16, which means they had to pick out the little kibble out of the mouse cages. All right. Now, for somebody to actually do that experiment, usually a grad student, in this case, a graduate student, they had to stay pretty much all day long to start picking out food and measuring the mice, making sure they weren't eating. So the 16 and 8 came from an agreement between the grad student and her significant other, saying that she could not spend all of her time in the lab doing this experiment. And so, you guys talk about relationships. Look, to balance a relationship, if they had a deal, it'd be 16 and 8 handshake. All right. And that's how that hour period was born.
Wow. So it's very not scientific at all. That's too funny.
What does my dad always say? In the morning, eat like, I don't forget the phrase, but basically eat
small, lightest to heaviest.
Lightest to heaviest, starting in the morning. Is that
not matter?
Does that matter?
I think it could make a small difference because you're kind of letting your body warm up over the course of the day in terms of what it's going to do and digest and everything. I don't think if you were to take a look at the big picture, it matters that much. It might give you some small percentage points, but probably the bigger issue is keeping the volume of food under control. So the quality of the food matters, quality of fuel. And I think the volume of the food also matters. One of the things, by the way, I always tell people, I'm sure you guys probably were exposed to this when you were kids as well. I had a lunch lady and my mom that basically always said, you got to clean your plate. When you got your plate,
of course,
clean it up. There's people starving in, insert your favorite country. Right. And, and the fact of the matter is most of the time, we're not, somebody else put that food in our plate if you're at a restaurant. Who told them to pile it that high?
Right.
All right. And then, you know, when we're actually at a family meal or something and, you know, like Thanksgiving time, you can't wait to eat and you get to the meal and all that great food that you're used to, or some holiday, you just start piling the food on, you're eating and talking.
Right.
And then the first tranche of food you eat, you really enjoy it. You put more food on your plate, and you know, all it takes is one or two more bites, and all of a sudden your brain knows like, oh man, I don't feel so good anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where there's a tipping point. So I always tell people, number one, quit the clean plate club.
Yes.
Right. There's a little history behind that too, by the way. I'll tell you in a second about where the heck did this clean plate club thing come from? This is I'm always curious, like, man, who's telling me to do this? And what's the reason? And where the heck did that come from to begin with? Well, the Clean Plate Club, by the way, came from World War I, where there wasn't enough food to feed people because the food had to be sent to soldiers. All right. So they're like, whatever. The point wasn't to clean your plate, lick your plate clean like a cat. The point was just to be conscious that we're actually needing to ration our food.
Right.
Got brought back in World War II. Same kind of idea. And somehow it just got twisted in this idea, like, the meaning was, please don't gorge on food,
more than you
save
need.
enough for everyone else. But somehow Clean Plate Club got translated into, go ahead and take a lot and make sure you eat it all too.
Yeah.
Right. So got to quit that, because that's the easiest way to overload your fuel tank.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
Everyone does it with their kids too. It really does start there.
It does.
Finish your broccoli.
And then
classic.
Yeah. One of the things that you have talked about, obviously, is the hormone insulin, and how that plays a role in, you know, the reason why over time people might gain weight. There are other hormones like that I see when I think about the women that I work with, like thyroid and cortisol, that may cause us to gain weight as we age. Can you talk about why those hormones may go out of whack and why they would have an effect on the metabolism?
All right. First of all, hormones are very complicated because they work like a loom. If you're trying to knit a sweater or make a very complicated blanket, it's got all kinds of patterns to it. And, you know, your body knows how to actually sort it all out. So the right hormones made at the right time, which affects another hormone. It has to be at the right time. The moment you actually kind of knock it slightly off kilter, everything kind of goes awry. The hormones you're referring to, thyroid and cortisol, happen to be made by the thyroid, which is an endocrine organ, made by the pituitary, and some of it you can also make some it's also affected by the adrenal gland, sits on top of your kidney. Without going into all the complicated anatomy and science, let me just say that both thyroid hormone and cortisol influence your behavior. Thyroid makes you jittery, makes you more anxious if you have too much of it. If you don't have enough, you're sluggish and you're slow, and your brain, you got some brain fog. Cortisol, when you got the right amount of cortisol, you are ready to rock. You know, like cortisol is actually kind of a stress hormone. Weirdly, when you have too much of the stress hormone, you get dulled. You don't actually feel like on top of things anymore. Your brain kind of turns into jello, and rather than actually when you're working out, your cortisol goes up too. But when you actually have too much stress cortisol, eventually you start to gain body fat as well. So again, it's sort of all about the balance, about not too much, not too little. I call it the Goldilocks zone.
Yeah.
Like the three bears, not too hard, not too soft, not too hot, not too cold, but just right. Okay, so now let me tell you how all of this connects back to body fat.
Right.
All right, because there's a couple of things that I think people need to understand about what body fat does. Number one, the obvious thing is body fat's a cushion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cushion, and it's stuffed inside us like peanuts, like in a FedEx container. If you're shipping some packages around, you want to put some peanuts in there to prevent things from rattling around or breaking. If we didn't have some body fat inside our tube of our body, if we tripped on a rug and fell, our organs would burst open. That's because our organs are pretty delicate.
Yeah.
So thank goodness we've got some padding. Second thing that body fat does, fuel tank. We talked about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Third thing that body fat does, and this is really quite remarkable, our body fat is an organ. It's an organ in the body. Now recognize an organ, just like your pancreas, your liver, your heart, and your brain. Respect your fat, because it's not just the rind at the end in the butcher case, and it's not the thing it is, but it's not the thing you see in a mirror. In the mirror, you're seeing too much of it. You want to have the healthy amount of body fat to serve hormonal purposes. So what are fat hormones? What are the normal fat hormones? Turns out there are at least 15 normal hormones made by body fat. All right. I'm not going to go through all 15 of them, but let me tell you about 3 of them that wind up interconnecting to behavior, which can then actually interact with cortisol and interact with thyroid. All right. So one of them is actually called leptin. Now, you may have heard of leptin.
Yeah.
Leptin is sometimes referred to as a satiety hormone, meaning that it actually turns down your appetite. I want you to think about it differently. Like, I like to make things easy to understand. Leptin is kind of like the volume switch on your radio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It depends on how loud it is. So when leptin levels go down, the volume's a little bit. When you turn it to the left, the volume's a little bit louder. And so you're hungrier. When you turn it up, okay, it actually, your appetite's a little bit less, so you eat a little bit less. All right. That's simple. So it's a volume switch. It's not an on and off switch. It's not a toggle. That's a key thing. But here's another one. Another fat hormone is called adiponectin. Adipose is actually the Greek root for fat. All right. Adipose tissue. All right. And adiponectin happens to be a hormone made uniquely by your healthy fat. Now, if I were your doctor and you guys are seeing me in my office and I said, look, let's go get some blood tests and just do a blood draw. I get one for you, Kelley, and one for you, Chad. And I tell the lab, please measure all the hormones in the body, thyroid, cortisol, everything. Okay. And all the fat hormones. Do you know your adiponectin, my adiponectin, if I did the test as well, would be 1,000 times higher than any other organ in your body.
Wow.
Why is it that high? Why is a fat hormone normally so high? And not just a little high, like 3 orders of magnitude higher. Okay, why 1,000 times higher? Because adiponectin made by healthy fat, which is the fuel tank, is what allows insulin to work efficiently to draw in the energy. You need adiponectin as a hormone to allow insulin to draw in, which makes your metabolism more efficient. When you don't have enough adiponectin, your insulin's not that efficient. It doesn't draw in energy. Oh, you know what that's going to do? Well, now you got to make more insulin to see if it's going to work better. More IGF-1 to make more insulin. Now you want to figure a problem. So you need, that's why ultra low body fat's not good. Like those people that go like less than 5%, those bodybuilders like go real thin, not good. They don't make enough adiponectin. Now, by the way, there's another hormone I want to mention. If adiponectin is the gas pedal to allow your metabolism to your insulin to work more efficiently, the other hormone called resistin is the brake. Adiponectin, go, fast lane, resistin. Oh, the truck's ahead, brake, resistin. So a little bit less force of how the insulin actually works. Now, all of these are made by healthy amounts of fat, just to function, just to be normal, healthy, alive. This is about energy. Right. I'm talking about having your heart beat, having your eyes blink, just be able to, go to the store. Now, what happens? I told you the tapestry. It works like a machine, finely oiled machine, like an operating system. Here's what happens. When you actually overeat and you overeat over time, or you have bad quality food and you're building up your fuel tanks, and now you got more fuel tanks, it's 100 times larger than before, and now it's starved of blood supply, and now it's inflamed, and now fat is leaking out. What happens? That inflammatory state of excess body fat derails the normal, healthy hormones that your fat is making.
This is fascinating.
Adiponectin goes haywire. Wait a minute. Do I want more or less? Should the insulin work better or low? I can't tell. It's so inflamed around here. What about the resistant? Break on or break off? I don't know, man. It's like too much inflammation. I can't tell. Same thing as leptin. All right. Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? I don't know anymore. It's just all inflamed in here. This is actually what starts to change your behavior, right?
Right.
Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? And it completely dovetails with your thyroid. Do you have energy? Do you not have energy? Or your cortisol. Am I stressed? Am I not stressed? All these things turn into a snarled traffic mess. Okay. This is like a log jam of the traffic when you actually have too much body fat, which is why in my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, what I'm saying is that, look, crash dieting is not good for you. Okay. Weight cycling, not that good for you.
Yeah.
All right. Eating continuously, not that good for you. But actually letting your body do its thing, get back to its operating system, controlling the amount of time you have, understanding like when your insulin's low, your metabolism shifts, when you don't eat too much, now you're not going to overload your fuel tanks. When you actually have right healthy amounts of body fat, and men and women are a little bit different in terms of distribution of the amounts based on your age, then you actually be able to make all these fat hormones, which are really good for you. And then finally, one last thing that's kind of I think a delight and joy, kind of like the surprise and delight part about body fat that I write about, is that in addition to being the cushion, in addition to being the fuel tank, in addition to being the endocrine organ that makes hormones, your fat is a space heater, which means that it can turn on, it can burn fuel to light up. Okay. When I say light up, what's the analogy I'd give? Like you have a gas stove in your kitchen, right? So you want to boil some water, you cook something. What do? You go to the handle, you go click, 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 whoosh, got a flame, right? Then you can actually cook on it. Well, that's what brown fat can do as well. Brown fat, you can actually activate brown fat. Cold temperature will do it. So if you do a cold plunge, okay, cold therapy. But foods can also activate brown fat. Now, when you activate brown fat, whoosh, like what's on your stove, you know what it does? It burns, okay? And what is it burning? It's burning fuel. Where does that fuel come from? Brown fat gets that fuel to burn down from your other excess fat. First place it goes to get fuel is extra fat. All right. So you can use fat to fight fat, and you can use food to activate it, which is really the cool thing. Now, one thing about brown fat I want to tell you about. There's two main types of fat in your body. There's white fat and brown fat. Okay. White fat is the wiggly, jiggly, lumpy, bumpy stuff. It's under your arm. It's under your chin. It's the muffin top. It's around the thigh and the butt. Okay. That's the stuff people want to shape.
Right.
All right. But that's actually the stuff you can see isn't the most dangerous part of white fat. The most dangerous kind of white fat is found inside the tube of your body. That's called visceral fat. It's also white, but it's packed inside your body like those peanuts. Too many peanuts, not good. And this is where I'm saying that even skinny people, thin people, can have too much visceral fat. Think about like if you're gonna FedEx, you guys are gonna ship me a fluorescent light bulb, long, thin. Okay, you're gonna go to FedEx and you're gonna ask for a thin box, and they're gonna say, well, you better put some peanuts in it, and you're gonna put some peanuts in there. But you know what? You feel like you got to use that whole bag of peanuts that you just bought. Now you're gonna stuff them in this thin box. All right. Now you've stuffed so many peanuts in, light bulbs are being crushed inside. You're going to force the box to be shut. You're going to tape it shut at arm's length. That's a skinny box still. Inside that box, those peanuts are crushing the light bulb. That's what visceral fat can do. It's highly inflammable, very dangerous, and it's linked to bad outcomes regardless of your body size. More visceral fat, more dangerous, more likely you're going to have a chronic disease.
Is that what's causing ischemic heart disease and plaque in your arteries?
Nope. It's related to having too much lipids. It's a certain, so I'm talking about visceral fat, like literally physical pieces of fat that are found inside. Think about a baseball glove inside your body cavity, choking your organs.
Gotcha.
The stuff that forms, the form that blocks your arteries for coronary disease is more like sludge. It's like if you were to pour grease down your sink and how you'll clog up your sink that way. That's a different kind of fat problem. It also is accumulating fat, but it's different. Visceral fat's really definitely harmful. Now, again, remember, some fat is good. It's just too much is bad. So here's the thing. When you gain too much harmful visceral fat, do you know where's the first place that you gain it? Where's the first place in your body you're going to gain visceral fat? What do you think?
Your belly, right?
Your belly and your, love handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wrong?
Okay.
Right.
So, well, listen, the reason you guys said that, and I would have said that too, is because that's what we can see, right? But in fact, that's not where the first place visceral fat grows when you're actually gaining it, including in thin people. The first place that visceral fat grows is
on your tongue. Interesting.
Okay, now here's some amazing.
I saw that in the notes, and I was wondering what that referred to. So go ahead.
Well, here's something that you guys might not realize. We've done research now to look at the anatomy of the human tongue. All right, and it turns out that there's 3 parts of the tongue. The tip of the tongue is like Cirque du Soleil. It's actually acrobatic, can do all kinds of amazing things. Middle of the tongue is muscle. And the reason it's muscle is got to move food to different parts of your body. I mean, to different parts of your mouth. Okay. Back of the tongue is like a big bean bag. Okay. It actually just helps foods slide down your gullet. And it's mostly visceral fat. Naturally, it's about a third of it's actually made out of fat. It's marbled like a ribeye steak. Okay. So when you actually gain extra visceral fat, one of the first places you gain it is in the back of your tongue. Even thin people. Now, how do you know this? Usually it's the bed partner who basically, of a thin person who's gaining weight, says, hey, you know what? You're starting to snore. And they'll go, oh, you know what? I'm also starting to gain some weight too. And that's actually this has been studied in people in Sweden. And well, what happens is, look, what happens when you're sleeping? You're totally relaxed. Okay. And when you're sleeping, your tongue is also relaxed. So a fat tongue will slide down and block your airway. You snort, and then you start to have sleep apnea, and then you start to snore, right? All these little, again, these are some of these little nuggets that I write about that actually help people put into context what it is they experience in their real life.
Really fascinating.
So what's a healthy BMI for, I'm a 36-year-old male and she's a 32-year-old female, or a range, just to give people some tangible, numbers to go off of?
I can cite the same things you can find on Wikipedia or on Dr. Google. Yeah. But I'm not going to do that. And I'll tell you why, because anybody can look that up. What I will tell you, and I really, really strongly believe in this, is that every individual is different. There is no ideal body mass index. First of all, BMI is different in Asia and Japan than it is in the United States. It's different in Europe. Europeans tend to be a little bit smaller. And by the way, there's like this sociocultural thing too. What's politically correct? Well, we got bigger people in America. Well, let's just go and adjust the scale so a little higher is more normal for us. Right. But that still doesn't speak to health, right? That just speaks to our cultural context. But there really is different body sizes. And something I write about in my book that I think is really important to emphasize is that if you look at the fittest people on the planet, all you have to do is look at the Olympics. Every 4 years, you see a group of people that are of different body sizes that are at the peak of fitness in their youth. All right. You got the tiny little gymnast. You got the lanky javelin thrower. You've got the bulky weightlifter, right? I don't know what you call the person who does the curls, but the point is that curl, right? But the point is that there is actually there is a gold medalist in every category who's at the top of their fitness, and their body shape and body size is different. If you look at boxing, there's 17 weight classes in boxing. Okay. And every one of those weight classes has a world champion. Yeah. And that's my point, is that, we have to sort of move away from this sort of one size fits all. There's a numerical bracket in which if you're outside of that, you're out. You don't belong to the club of healthy anymore. I think what we need to do is to recognize, we're doing this in medicine, by the way, it's called personalized medicine, individualized medical therapy. How your body might respond, Chad, is different than how yours would be, Kelley. Gender makes a difference. Size makes a difference. Age makes a difference. If we actually looked at everybody as an individual, and I'm not being politically correct, I'm just being scientific, actually, we'll actually be able to find, given a person's background, genetics, life situations, their environment, what is actually more optimal for them. So I want people to sort of, it's the same question, like, what's the optimal number of calories? Can you give us a number of calories we should be eating every day? We want to do that so badly. Yeah. Okay. Like that's such human nature. But I really do think that we want to actually start to frame things on an individualistic level and try to find out what fits the individual.
I love that. I think that health has to be bio-individual because we all have so many different circumstances. That said, you have your book and you have your masterclass, and I think so many people will learn so much more than they could in this next 3-minute blip of the question I'm about to ask in terms of what they can do. And they should absolutely go and check those things out, because if you really want to regulate your metabolism, you are the expert. So tell us though, if somebody wants to just get started, or they want to even kind of get a taste of what's in your book and in your masterclass, what are the foods that they should be eating? What are if there's any supplements that maybe you think that everyone should be taking? Give us a little bit of insight into that.
All right, I'm going to give you a little teaser on the deep dive, because, of course, I often get asked, what are the 5 foods, or, what do you do for yourself? And I'll just kind of tell you that, first of all, the research I've been doing has shown that there are more than 200 different foods that can activate your health defenses. And there's 150 of them I write about that activate your metabolism. They light up brown fat to burn down harmful white fat. They elevate your metabolism, make your metabolism work a lot better. So rather than go through 150 of them, what are some of the ones that, that I enjoy eating? Yeah. I can tell you, avocado works great. It's a great source of fiber, good for gut health, and it activates your metabolism. I love pears. A ripe, juicy pear packed with dietary fiber has a natural chemical called chlorogenic acid, activates brown fat. Tomatoes, and whether it's whole tomatoes in a salad, cooked tomatoes in a sauce, or a tomato paste. I like to cook. You can actually eat tomatoes, and they activate your brown fat. They improve your metabolism. Imagine that. You can actually, by the way, I'm going to go back to pears for a second. You know how many pears you need to eat to shrink your waist size, because you're decreasing your visceral, harmful peanut packing fat? Okay, you can shrink your waist size. All you need is 2 pears per day. Wow. Will actually start to make the difference. So the volume of these foods that activate your metabolism and burn body fat, not that bad. They're not like crazy amounts of food. They're very reasonable. Pomegranate juice, an 8-ounce glass of pomegranate juice, which is 2 shot glasses, more or less. Okay, not a lot, because it's got a lot of sugar in it, natural sugar. But if you have a normal physiology, you'll be fine. When you swig that down, there's a natural chemical called elagitannins that cause your gut bacteria to grow a particular bacteria called Akkermansia, Akkermansia muciniphila. Now, Akkermansia is very important because people who are lean in their body type have more Akkermansia. People who are overweight or obese have much less Akkermansia. People who have trouble with their blood sugar and insulin sensitivity have almost no Akkermansia. So Akkermansia is a guardian of your metabolism. Oh, one more kind of golden nugget about Akkermansia. Again, I'm a cancer researcher. When we've studied cancer patients, either a series of 100 or 200 cancer patients with melanoma, breast cancer, lung cancer, whole series of cancers, getting immune treatments, immune therapies to allow their immune systems to fight cancer. That's a game changer, okay? The people who respond to immune therapies have more akkermansia than people who don't have akkermansia. If you don't have akkermansia, kind of you're screwed. Your immune system's not going to respond. All right. So this is kind of an example of what are the beverages that I like to drink that actually help my metabolism and my health defenses? I drink tea, green tea. But guess what? My research shows it's not just green tea, like regular green tea. You can drink matcha. By the way, you can drink oolong, which is a slightly more oxidized tea. You can go all the way Earl Grey, black tea with a little bergamot, if you like orange. But there's a surprise tea called Pu'er tea, P-U''er, comes from the village Pu'er in China.
I've heard of this. It's like a metabolism boosting tea, right?
Exactly.
Amazing.
What it does, it's a fermented tea, Kelley. It's actually made, and it has its own microbiome in the tea. So when you drink that tea, it's known as a digestive tea. So, people in China who are, eating, rich meals or whatever, like you sip in it a little bit after dinner in order to be able to help as a digestive. But what you're also doing is you're actually improving your gut health because you're drinking a probiotic tea. So tea, I drink all the time. Coffee, I like to drink in the morning. I used to live in Italy when I did a gap year before I went to medical school, and I picked up this, lovely caffeine coffee habit. I'll swig down some espresso in the morning. But coffee's got chlorogenic acid, which lights your metabolism. And tea has catechins, which are the polyphenols, which activate it. So basically, look, this is what I do in, like, for example, my master classes, or you come sign up for my free newsletter. My master class is also free. I will get up there and I will actually come on and I'll talk about the latest discoveries about all these foods, what to eat, how much to eat, like what it does, why it does it. How do you know it's actually going to work? What's the research that cites it? And it's a lot of fun. So, anybody who wants to come on board to check it out, just come to my website, drdrwilliamlee.com, or follow me on social, because I'm putting out stuff all the time. My handle is at drdrwilliamlee.li.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was going to actually ask about your handles and everything. One last thing that I wanted to say that I found so fascinating was a lot of the testing that I run with clients is, I'll do a gut health test, but then we'll also look at like insulin levels and things like that. And one of the things that I've found too, and I know there's so much research on this, but is that like low or like literally non-existent level of akkermansia. And then people who have also this insulin resistance, and they have a really hard time with weight loss. And so I think that you sharing that like is so interesting. There, like you said, there's so many things that you can do, and so much more in your books and all of that we can learn.
Just one more thing, just to give a little couple of extra. I talked about pomegranate juice and just sort of like 2 shot glasses worth. Okay, that's enough to actually change your akkermansia to go from 0 to something.
Wow.
I had a patient once who was a cancer patient, young person who was going to get an immune therapy, and she had 3 kids. There was bronchitis running around the family. Their local doctor just prescribed antibiotics up to yin yang, and she was on it. And the oncologist was just about to give her the immune therapy, and I'm like, whoa, not so fast there. Let's make sure we get the akkermansia up. So we tested it, and she had close to 0 akkermansia. And I'm like, she's not going to respond. We got her on pomegranate juice, and we had her drink it for 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, she had 6 times the amount of akkermansia compared to the general population. And when she got her immune therapy, she started responding, ultimately became a complete responder, but started responding after 3 weeks. So really fast response, a very good outcome. And this goes to show you just how powerful our gut health actually is. What if you don't like pomegranate juice or can't get pomegranate juice? Turns out 2 other juices can do the same thing. Cranberry juice, which, arguably is harder to have. If pomegranate is too sweet, cranberry is a little too sour. But Concord grape juice is another juice that can grow akkermansia.
Constantly validates that food is medicine.
It really is.
I study food as medicine, and to me, it's really so fun to discover new properties of foods. And for me, like we started out talking about, the fact that people feel shackled by the burden of excess weight or metabolism or diets that they have to go on and rotate on or rotate off of. I actually think that science tells us it's time to rediscover the joy of eating.
Totally.
And just by choosing the right food and eating in the right ways, we can actually reclaim our life back and also combine it with enjoyment, because, we're humans. Eating and enjoying our food is really part of who we are.
Yes.
And I think we've gotten away from that and just turned into sort of, gotten into these sort of instruction sheets and automatons, and we've taken that away from ourselves. So it's time to actually take it back.
Oh, yes. I could not agree with you more. I feel like I was actually saying that today on Instagram. I was, as humans, when our pleasure is up from food, we're also, absorbing more nutrients, and we're not in that stress response place, and our metabolism can be fired up. And I'm sure you go into that even more in your book. But like I said, we're so grateful for your time. We know you're really busy. We will absolutely link this in the show notes, your book and your masterclass, and where everyone can find you. I think people are going to get so much out of this.
I feel like everything I learned in my childhood, it was totally flipped upside down.
Today. Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you. This was incredible.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
We really hope that you enjoyed that episode. You can follow me on Instagram at Wellness by Kelley. And if you're new around here, you can sign up for the WBK 7-day free trial, where you can get access to all of my low impact workouts, blood sugar balancing, plant-based recipes, and guided meditations, all available on wellnessbykelly.com and on the WBK app.
Hey, thanks for listening.
Please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also connect with us on social media at Wellness by Kelley. Drop us a DM for who you want to hear from.